Hello, crafty friends. It's Jessica here. Welcome back to Jessie Kate Creates. Today's video is super exciting because Spellbinders recently launched this Rocky the Dancin Yeti etched die, and right before it released, they reached out to me and they offered to send me this die set for free, and in exchange, I make a project with it. And I said absolutely yes because I love Spellbinders dies, and also I thought this die set was so adorable. For this project, I'm just starting out by die cutting out a bunch of the elements for this die. Now, whenever you see a die set with a lot of bits and pieces like this, I know it can be hard to know sometimes like what each piece is for, but Spellbinders does have a guide that lets you know what each die cuts out and what to use it for on your Dancin Yeti. Now, full disclosure, when I got these, I was so excited to use them that I did not look at the guide, which caused me to make one or two small errors that I'll point out later in the video, but we made it work. So I taped down those dies and ran them through my die cutting machine. And now that they're cut out here, I'm using removable Scotch tape on the back to keep them in place because this is going to make it easier for me to color these in. And also I'm making this project over the course of like 2 or 3 days, so it just makes it easier to come back to. I did a more in-depth tutorial on this method in another video that I will link up here if you want to see that. But for now, in this video, we're going to jump into the coloring. Now for this, I am going to show all the coloring in real time. If you want to skip over it, I have timestamps on this video, so you can just skip over the parts you don't want to see or watch the parts you do, whatever works best for you, friend. I chose to use Copic markers here because I've just really been into Copic markers lately. And also I don't have a bunch of blue cardstocks in my stash, so this just made more sense. Now, when I was initially coloring these images in, the plan was just for everything to get flat color. I was not planning to do any shading, which is why you don't see me doing any here. However, as I got going, there's one image while I was doing it, I started shading it. And then I kind of thought, well, is it going to look silly if one thing is shaded, but the rest isn't? Plus, I was enjoying my time coloring, so I just decided to go back and shade everything in. And so that's why you see me like kind of jumping all over the place because I changed my mind, and you're totally allowed to do that in crafting. While I was making these, I did not do a great job of showing you the colors that I was using. So I've gone ahead and popped them up on the screen. It lets you know what Copic markers I'm using. For all of these, I just used 2 color blends. So for each one on the screen, it'll tell you the lightest color I used and the darkest color I used. I hope that's helpful. Most of these I used Copic markers, but y'all know I have some very random markers in my stash. But just use what you have on hand and use what you enjoy. So maybe you're not into Copic markers. Cut these out from different shades of cardstock if that is more your vibe, or maybe you really enjoy watercolor. Die cut these out on watercolor paper and do that instead. That actually would be really super cute. Actually, I don't think I will have time to do that, but one of y'all should do that. And if you do, tag me on Instagram so that I can see it. Okay. So here, you can see here, I did the scarf. And at this point I realized, oh, I haven't shaded anything else. But I already started shading, so I'm just going with it at this point, and we are just going to make it work. For the rest of this coloring, I don't really have that much to say. You're just going to see me coloring everything in and going back to add all the shading I missed the first time around. So I'm just going to turn on some music for you if you want to watch the rest of this coloring. If you don't, like I said, there'll be timestamps in the video, and I will just meet back up with you guys once everything is colored in and ready to assemble. now that everything has been colored in, it is time to assemble our Yeti. So for this part of the video, I have sped things up double time just to make this video a little bit faster because it is already kind of long. So unfortunately, my hands do not move this fast in real life. It would be very nice because it would save me a lot of time in the craft room, but I just wanted you guys to know that. Okay, so one thing I didn't show very well on camera, but the base of the Yeti has little marks or indents that kind of show you where to line up the belly and where to line up the face so that everything is like properly aligned. The other thing I noticed here, the eyes of the Yeti are not perfectly round, so it did kind of take me a second to get them lined up into place, which if I had realized that, I might have just been more careful not to accidentally color them in, but it all worked out anyway. Now this is the second part of the eye, I guess the part that's going to make like the cute little pupils. And I love these. At first, I was not sure what these were, and I didn't cut them out. And that's actually when I had to pull up the guide to see what everything was supposed to be. And I was like, oh, these are eyes. And so I went back and cut those out and colored them in. And I love them because it just makes him look so stinking adorable. I love it. Okay, so next I'm going to add the hands and feet onto our Yeti. And right now I'm doing this by like picking everything up and putting it together like while it's in the air. But as we go, I'll kind of figure out a smarter way to do these tiny pieces, which I hope is helpful for some of you guys. I think I do it with the arms. Now, the other thing I want to point out here is, I know the lighting for this section of the video is not the best. I'm using a ring light here, and so I put down a piece of paper to help with some of the glare, but that also means that while I'm working, I'm trying not to glue my project down to this piece of paper. So a couple times you'll see me scrape things up, and that's just because I didn't want anything to get stuck down. But if you make this, you're probably not going to have that issue, but that's just what's going on here. Okay, so this is where I kind of get a little bit smarter, and I realize it's easier to put glue on the teeny tiny pieces and then bring the bigger pieces to them to pick them up. That made it just a little bit easier to get everything lined up how I wanted it to be. And then I'm taking time to figure out how I want the arms of my Yeti to go. The die set includes like a little flower and a little pot of hot cocoa and like whipped cream. So if you want your Yeti to be like holding a flower or a warm beverage or something cute like that, you could absolutely do it. But I decided I kind of just wanted him there, just chilling on the front of the card. And I thought that worked because this is already like a super cute, super adorable die. And one of the reasons when they sent this out and asked if I wanted to create with it, I really like using products that I can use all year long, like that don't just have to be for one holiday. Like, don't get me wrong, I do have a lot of specialty, like things that are just for, I don't know, Christmas or Halloween or something like that. And those are fun too. But it's also really nice when you get dies that you can kind of stretch and get the most bang for your buck. And that's why I liked this one, because this doesn't have to be, like, I'm kind of making this more holiday or winter themed, but you could really use this guy for any time of year. Like if you don't put this scarf on him and put a flower in his hand, it's like a springtime Yeti. Or, oh, you know what would be really cute too? If you made your Yeti pink and have him holding like a red flower, and then he could be like a Valentine's Day Yeti. Wouldn't that be really cute? Anyway, that's another one. If someone makes a card like that, like, post it on Instagram and tag me so I can see it. Okay, now this part, I'm putting together the Santa hat. I wasn't sure if I wanted my Yeti to have on a Santa hat or just to be wearing a beanie, so I figured I'd put them both together. But the little ball I put on the end of the Santa hat is actually supposed to be the Yeti's nose. I didn't realize the Yeti was supposed to have a nose. And it wasn't until I looked at the instruction sheet that I was like, oh, I definitely glued that together wrong. But that's okay because it still looks right. And the only people who know it's wrong are me and now you, because I told you. But nobody else who sees the card will know. It'll just be our like little secret. You know what I mean? The other thing is that the white fluff at the bottom of the Santa hat, like the band on it, you can use that on the Santa hat, or you can also use it on the beanie. I thought it was for the Santa hat, so that's how I did it. And then afterwards, I realized it was for either one. But I thought the beanie looked just fine without it, so I didn't go back and die cut it, and I think it still worked out really well. Now here for the horn of the Yeti, I'm doing that same thing where I add them on kind of like, I put the glue on the tiny pieces and then I bring the big pieces to the tiny pieces, and I thought that looked good. Okay, so I still haven't decided what hat I want the Yeti to have, and I walked away, and this is, I believe, the next day now where I'm kind of finishing up this card. So to make the background on this card, I am using the Spellbinders Postage Edge rectangles. Unfortunately, they don't carry these anymore, but they do have nested postage labels and tag die, and it's almost exactly the same die set. It's just some of the tiny like stitching details are a little bit different. And that die set is actually on sale right now because Spellbinders is having their early Black Friday sale. So I will link to that die set down in the comments below, and I'll also link to the early Black Friday sale. Please don't feel like you have to go out and buy those exact items to make a card similar to this. As always, use whatever it is you already have in your stash. But if it's something you've been wanting and it's kind of been on your list of something to grab, then now might be a good time to pick it up. Okay, so I cut the postage piece of the die out of glitter paper, and I cut the kind of plain rectangle out of just white 80-pound cardstock, and I'm going to make a simple winter scene on my piece of cardstock. So first I grabbed a scrap piece of paper, and I just used my scissors to cut out a nice little sloped hill shape. If you have a die that does that, you could do that, but for me it was just faster to grab a pair of scissors, and it was an easy shape to cut. So I'm going to tape that down, and then I'm going to do some ink blending. And I wanted to create just kind of a simple wintry skyline. So I'm starting by taking a shade of light blue ink. This is Summer Sky by Memento, and I'm just blending that on all of the edges of the card. I didn't keep all the ink blending in here just to speed up the video. So I blended that all over, and then next I'm going to pull out a soft gray. I am using Dove by Concord and Night. This is a really light gray, and I'm just adding this along the edge of our hill. This is going to create a little bit of shadow, and I wanted to use grays and blues so it would bring in a really kind of like icy, cold, wintry feel to the background that we're making. So this will just add a little bit of shadow and make the hill kind of pop out on the card. And then once I'm done with the gray, I decided I needed a little bit more contrast on my card. So I pulled out a darker blue. This is, I believe, Parisian blue by the ton. And I'm going to add this all over the edges. Now I just want to add a little bit of this. I want to kind of up the contrast, but I don't want it to overtake everything. I still want it to be kind of a really soft, powdery, wintry feel to the card. Now, of course, you could change the feel of this by changing up the colors. I think this would also be really pretty if you used maybe some purple instead of some blue. But once again, just make whatever makes your heart happy and use whatever colors feel good to you. Okay, so now that it's done, look at that hill. Isn't that just beautiful? I love every time you reveal ink blending like that. It's always like a little present. So next up, it's time to add the sentiment to the card. So I'm just playing around with the positioning of the Yeti to figure out whether I want the sentiment at the top of the card or maybe more towards the bottom of the card. And ultimately, I decided I like it at the bottom of the card because it really helps to ground the Yeti so it doesn't look like he's floating. Now for the sentiment, I'm using a clear stamp of the month from October 2021. So this is no longer available, but Spellbinders does have this Christmas Magic sentiment set that's a very similar style. So I'll have that link down below if you're interested. So for the sentiment, the one I picked says Warm Holiday Wishes, which I thought was kind of cute since we have like a Yeti in a snowy background. I thought that was just fun. So I'm going to heat emboss my sentiment. So I'm treating my panel with some anti-static powder, and then I'm going to stamp it down a couple times with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. This is a pigment ink, so it takes a while for it to dry, so it's great for heat embossing. And whenever I'm heat embossing with black powder, I like to use black ink so that if there are any gaps and anything shows through the embossing powder, it still just looks black. It just makes it look nicer, I think. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm sprinkling on my powder, tapping off any of the excess, and then I'm using a paintbrush to clear any tiny specks. Since this is black powder on a white panel, you're going to notice any of those little specks, so I'm just being careful to get rid of them. Now, I had to heat emboss off camera, but once it's done, it looked really nice and it came out really well. So now it's time to kind of adhere everything and put it all together. So since this panel is going on to glitter cardstock, I am using a super sticky, dry adhesive, just because with some glitter cardstocks, they can be kind of difficult to adhere to. So I usually use foam with it, but I didn't want to use foam for this layer. So I'm just using this, this double-sided tape. I'll have it linked down below. And I'm just positioning that onto my glitter postage stamp. And you can't see it on camera, but there are some lines on there. So I could tell where I needed to line everything up for it to be nice and straight. Next up, I decided I wanted the beanie instead of the Christmas hat. I thought that made this card just a little bit more versatile. So I'm just going to glue that down really quick. And then once that's on there, it's time for me to make the dancing portion of this Yeti. Now, if you wanted to glue everything down flat, you could. But I went through my stash and I found these round foam dots. These are from the Dollar Tree. I don't know if they still have them. I picked these up years ago and never ever used them, but they fit perfectly here. So see, I'm not gluing the bottom down. I'm just putting the foam dot in that little hole, and it's going to allow the legs to swing on the card. So I'm also using the same foam tape on the top half of my Yeti. This foam was a little bit thicker than my regular foam, which is why I wanted to use it so that everything was the same thickness on the card. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I kind of have everything how I want it, but I haven't actually taken the back off the foam and put anything down yet because I realized it would probably be easier to put my panel down first. So I have this A2 card base. This is just green 110-pound cardstock I picked up from Michael's. I'll have it linked down below. Spellbinders also has like a Peridot green cardstock. So if you have that, that shade would work really well here too, or whatever you have in your stash. Just use what you have in your stash. So since I have this double-sided adhesive out, I'm using this to adhere my panel down to my card base. I just thought this would be easier to do without the Yeti on the panel first. I hope that makes sense. So now I can actually add the Yeti to the card. So again, the legs are not glued down in any way, shape, or form. That little foam dot is just going to keep them in place and allow them to swing. And then I'm going to add the top half of the Yeti. That is stuck down, but now you can see this is the cutest thing about all the little dancing dies Spellbinders has. Look at his legs go, and they slide so easy, and I just think that's so cute. I probably did that for like 2 minutes. I cut most of it out, but it's just really fun. Now, since I am using a colored card base, I needed to have a liner for the inside of my card so that it was easy to write a message on the inside. So I just took a panel of cardstock that's 4 by 5 1/4, and I just used some of those same ink shades that I used on the front of the card to add a little something to that panel just to tie the inside of the card to the outside of the card. I think this is just a really simple steps on cards that just kind of bring everything together. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but I really like to do it. Now for the final touches on my Yeti. For the pom-pom on the hat and also for the scarf, I'm using this glitter pen to add a bunch of glitter and sparkle. And then I also have this black glaze gel pen, and I'm going to put this on his eyes, and it's just going to make them glossy and make them really pop. I have been loving using this pen on any like critters or creatures that I've been making over the last couple months. I just think it really makes their eyes pop when you put this on their pupils. And then finally, I'm taking a white gel pen and I'm just adding some highlights. And guys, no rhyme or reason here. Wherever I felt like putting a highlight, I put a highlight. And I just think it makes him really cute and makes him pop even more on the card. So that completes our card. We have our Rocky the Dancin Yeti just dancing away on the front of this card. This was really fun to make, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Oh, here's a little close-up. I hope you can see the sparkle on his scarf. It's really pretty in person. I don't know if the camera's picking it up so well. I really enjoyed making this project. I hope you guys liked it. Let me know in the comments what you think of how this card turned out. If you liked this video and you want to see all the videos I put out, then please subscribe to the channel and tap that notification bell. That way you get notified every time I put out a new video. And if you could please like this video, that really helps me with the YouTube algorithm and it helps other people to find me so we grow this crafty community. Thanks for watching and I'll see you again soon. Bye!